So hello everyone, good morning, day 24, here we go, eyes down for full house. Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of say something to start with, which is that, I've been doing these sessions for the last, this is the 24th day I've done it, and it's become a bit like a one-man band, so basically it's like I'm doing the preparation for doing the class, and then I'm doing the class, and then I'm loading up, trying to load videos onto YouTube, and it's like being the presenter and then going into the editing suite, and then I try and publicise it. So it's a bit like I then go into the office and try and get people interested in it, and to be honest, it's too much. I can't do all of that, and in a way, it's not Buddhist. That we're supposed to be cooperating with each other and helping the world through our joint efforts. So me doing all this on my own is not Buddhism. It's not going to have an effect. It's like, how many people are watching this? 100. It's like a grain of sand on the beach compared to how many people are out there. So I'm just saying, I can do a limited amount. I'm trying to I have written to newspapers and things like that to try and get some publicity for this, but it's the facts of the matter. There's a lot of suffering going on out there. These videos are trying to say something important to those people, and they need to be getting out there. So I've had one bit of help from Steve, who's given me a lead to try and get onto quite a busy website. But basically, I need to be I remember working in Earth Cafe with Vimla Bandhu, and he was the chef, and it's really hard being the chef, having to decide what we're cooking, and then to manage everybody, so I'd go up to him and say, what do you want me to do, and what veg do you want me to chop, and he would say, oh God, I don't know. And he'd so it's like, so the more the more help that I could get in terms of people just taking up some sort of responsibility for something, like it might be just taking up responsibility if you've got time, if you've got time on your hands. And I think a few Buddhist friends have talked about being split between wanting to retreat into reading or meditating or whatever it is in this period, and then they feel like they ought to be doing something, so maybe there's a lot of people a bit like that. But if you've got time, if you've got the willingness, then and if you've got the capability, if you can just get on with something on your own, without having to direct you, then I could really do with some people helping to, boost this site, the visibility of this site. Two, possibly fundraise, because we could actually buy, promote it on Facebook or YouTube, whatever. We could pay for it to go higher up in the rankings so that more people see it. So ideas like that, and some things I'm good at, and some things I'm not so good at. So I would really appreciate a bit more of a team effort, here. I just get a sense of people, they come to the class and then they applaud at the end, and then that's it. Well, it isn't it? It's not it. We have to be doing things for each other, for the world, and not just applauding. It's not Live Aid. We just watch the bands and we think we've all participated in something, then we go home and that's the end of it. So Yeah. All right. So this week, starting yesterday, I've started to look at some of the practical stuff around isolation, and so the Buddhist tradition's got a lot to say about this, and um, somebody, Evan says, I've passed it on to quite a few people. Why can't it stream via Buddha site? Well, yeah, somebody do that. Somebody do that. I need to not do that. It's not. I'm busy enough already. Somebody else do that, please. Okay. All right. So we're So we're on to practical stuff around isolation, and today's topic I thought be good to look at is fear and dread. So the Buddha did talk about the fear that can come up, when we're in the forest or we're in difficult situations. So I think I'm just going to start with that and then get into it, and then we can do a little bit of physical warm up before then meditating. But maybe this will be all a way of reflection that we can then reflect on in the meditation. Okay, so I'll start with showing a picture of a Tibetan yogi called Milarepa. So Milarepa is very famous in Tibetan Buddhism, and so he lived up in the above the snow line in the mountains in Tibet, and he became enlightened, and but his story is an unusual one, because he started off, he was like a black musician. He was a black magician, and he did lots of very unskillful things, that involved casting spells on people and all that, So anyway, at a certain point, he decided he wanted to turn against doing that, and he sought out a guru. So he had a guru called Marpa, and Marpa gave him all these tasks to do to purify his karma. So Marpa made him build a tower, build a tower. He says, "Oh, build this tower over there, I want it to be this high." So he'd build this tower, and then Marpa said, "No, I didn't want it there. I want it over there, So he'd have to knock it down and he'd build it over there, and he just kept doing this with him. So to the point where he's just grinding his ego down, and in the end he just let go in a way, and just did whatever Marpa asked him to do. So sometimes we have to have our karma purified by going through an ordeal. So I'll talk a little bit about ordeal today. And so we go through an ordeal, and it's not easy. By definition, it's not easy. So maybe at the moment, many people are going through a bit of an ordeal, in the sense that this isn't what they've felt like they're signed up for. Not working, being at home, really worried about their own personal finances and about the economy. So in a way, this is a bit like being asked to do something where turn up, and do something positive, even though that it might come to nothing. So it might be that the efforts you're making now are will just fall apart. Like the economy just might completely tank. Not saying that lightly, but it might do. You don't know. So what Marpa is encouraging Milarepa to do is to keep doing the next indicated action. So he's saying to him, right, no, you need to, this is what you need to do. Build a tower over there. Do something positive, you know. Do what I tell you to do. Yeah, so Milarepa, he did become enlightened, and it's said that he just lived on nettle leaves. Yeah, he just lived on nettle leaves, on nettles. So it's like he turned a bit green, and so yeah. So here's an example of a yogi in Tibet. Now, what the Buddha in the Buddha's time, a lot of the wanderers. So there were all these wanderers wandering around India. This is about 2,500 years ago, and the Buddha to be was one of those wanderers. It was called Siddhartha Gautama, and he was asked by these Brahmins that to say, well, you know, how do you well, they're asking him about how do you cope in a difficult situation like when you're in the forest, and you know, so this Brahmin says it's not easy to endure isolated forest or wilderness dwellings. It is not easy to maintain seclusion. It's not easy to enjoy being alone. The forests, as it were, plunder the mind of a monk who has not attained concentration. And the Buddha agrees with this. He says, yeah, this is the case. It isn't easy being alone. The forests do plunder the mind of a monk who has not attained concentration. But he gives the teaching. He says, the thought occurred to me when people who are unpurified in their bodily activities resort to isolated forest or wilderness dwellings. It's the fault of their unpurified bodily activities, which means unskillful bodily activities, being unskillful with bodily actions. So not doing loving kindness, not being generous, not trying to be content. So it's saying it's because of their ethics that they experience unskillful fear and terror. And he goes on to say, yeah, because the verbal activity, unskillful verbal activities, unskillful mental activities. But he says, it's not the case that I have unskillful, body, speech, and mind. It's not the case for me. So you know, I don't expect. I'm not. So he says, seeing in myself this purity of livelihood. So it's like body, speech, and mind, and livelihood. In a way, just life. It's samajiva. It just means life. Our life. I felt even more undaunted about staying in the wilderness. So it's like, and there's in the Mangala Sutta it says, ethics is the greatest protection. He says the thought occurred to me when people who are covetous and passionate about sensual pleasures. I am not like that. When people have ill will, I am not like that. People have sloth and torpor, restlessness, anxiety, the hindrances. I'm not like that. People have doubt. I'm not like that. People who given to praising themselves, disparaging others. People who tend towards panic and dread. People who desire fame and gain. I'm not like that. Who are lazy and lacking persistence, who are muddled in their mindfulness and who are unconcentrated. This bit's great. It says, the thought occurred to me, when people who are drooling idiots resort to isolated forest or wilderness dwellings, it is the fault of their drooling idiocy that they give rise to unskillful fear and terror. So basically he's saying that people who do all these things like praise themselves and disparage others, or lack mindfulness, or lack persistence and all that sort of thing. It is not the case that I am a drooling idiot. When I resort to isolated forest or wilderness dwellings, I am consummate in discernment, in wisdom. I am one of those noble ones who are consummate in discernment when they resort to isolated forests or wilderness dwellings. Seeing in myself this wisdom, I feel even more undaunted about staying in the wilderness. And then, so what he says is that he deliberately faced, sought out difficult situations to practice working with his fear and dread. So he says that, so the Buddha says that, the thought occurred to me, what if on recognised designated nights, such as the 8th, 14th and 15th of the lunar fortnight, I were to stay in the sort of places that are awe-inspiring and make your hair stand on end. Perhaps I would get to see that fear and terror. So, at a later time, on these nights, I did stay in places that are awe-inspiring, and while staying there, a wild animal would come, or a peacock would make a twig fall, or wind would rustle the fallen leaves. The thought would occur to me, is this that fear and terror coming? Then the thought occurred to me, why do I just keep waiting for fear? What if, in whatever state I'm in, when fear and terror comes to me, I were to subdue that fear and terror in that very state? So when fear and terror came to me while I was walking back and forth, I would not stand or sit or lie down. I would keep walking back and forth until I had subdued that fear and terror. When fear and terror came to me while I was standing, I would not walk or sit or lie down, but would keep standing until I had subdued that fear and terror. So he's saying that whatever he was doing when fear and terror arose, the Buddha, he didn't stop and do something else. He didn't. If he was walking, he wouldn't like stop and sit down. So it just applies to anything. Whatever you're doing when you experience fear and terror, you just carry on doing that same thing. And I think this is what people use in something called what's it called? There's a way of dealing with anxiety where what you do is you pick things that you're anxious about. Exposure therapy. That's it. You pick things that you're anxious about, and then pick one that's mild, and then try and do it. So you're actually facing your anxiety. So if it's like spiders, then you might sort of just sit a bit near to a spider and just face the anxiety, and you just tackle one thing at a time. So when you it's like getting used to it, getting used to the anxiety, getting used to the fear, and kind of turning towards it in a certain sort of way. And he goes on to say that the Buddha, that some people think, when it's night it's day, and some people think when it's day it's night. But I don't think it's day when it's day. I don't think it's night when it's day and day when it's night. I think when it's day, and when it's night. So it's like I am really clear about what things are. So so it's like not sort of turning away from fear and terror. So there's the idea in psychology of something called the dark night of the soul. Thomas More. The dark night of the soul. So what that is that we can be practicing our Buddhism, or we can be we can be making effort in life. Maybe we've brought a family up, and we've held a job down, and we've really contributed towards society, and all that's been, that sort of thing is from a Buddhist point of view is very skillful. To be responsible, to take care of others, to contribute. But what can happen when we're doing all the best we're doing the best we can do, and then it's like a kind of a malaise can just come up from sort of nowhere, like a feeling of discomfort and not being in control of things. People like when people have midlife crises, that sort of thing, it can be a bit like that. So it's like maybe we've put all our efforts into something, we've invested in a particular way of being in life, and maybe it has been a career or something like that, and a family, and then this discomfort comes up, and this is sometimes the dark night of the soul. And I'm just going to read a description in this book of it. It says, your dark night may be a rite of passage. It may be offering an opportunity to make a significant turn in your life. But it isn't easy to make these turns, largely because they demand that you enter the unknown. So we're being thrust into the unknown right now, like having our familiar life patterns taken away from us. You may have to dig deep into your resources, your past experiences, your learning, the personal qualities you've already developed. So the dark night takes you deep. So it's saying that actually it's a good thing that you're experiencing this. So, maybe you've been successful on a certain level, but this is taking you deeper. So this is taking you deeper into what life is about, as well as the things that you've been covering. It's also about these other things, the unknown. It's about the unknown and the unfamiliar. Life in a jar. Your dark night is liminal. So liminal is an in-between place between two other places. And that explains in part why it is so uncomfortable. It is neither here nor there. It seems to take you out of life rather than further into it. It becomes difficult to find words for your experience, and you may hesitate to describe it to friends because people usually want good news. They don't know what to do with a person in the dark. As the psychologist Jung might say, you are in a vessel and difficult to contact. So Jung, the psychologist Jung, was into something called alchemy, which was about turning base metals into gold. So that it was in the Middle Ages, people had this kind of it was almost like a bit of a symbolic religion. So it's a bit like the idea that you turn the difficult things in life into something creative. If you transform, the dark night in a way, the stuff that just presents itself as awful, the base metal, into something valuable. And in alchemy, there's this idea of a vessel. So things are contained within a vessel, and then within that, the crucible, and they're heated up. So it's like they're transformed within the container. So it's like somehow there's something about creating a container for transformation. So in a way, being on your own, being on a retreat or something, or being in forced retreat like this is, can be a bit of a container within which we can transform ourselves. So a classic alchemical illustration from the 17th century shows something called a retort, which is a tall neck vase, completely black and labelled putrefaction, so which means kind of decay, rotting, that sort of thing. So this is about the sometimes in life, we have, nature has the sunshine, brightness, it has the idea of growth, so a plant will grow up towards the light, it needs the light, but it also grows downwards into the soil, and it kind of, and the soil is full of things like manure, which are rotting down. So it's like in life we need to be, people talk about need to be going down as well as up. So it's like we're making progress, we're trying to go up, but actually sometimes the manure is in our experience, in our kind of rubbishy experience. And Chogyam Trungpa talked about something like something like spreading the kind of manure on the field of Bodhi, of enlightenment. So it's like, we need to give our rubbishy states of mind and our difficulties and our anxieties and our fears, we need to include those in our practice, in our lives. We need to not try and pretend that they aren't there and bypass them, but to kind of accept all the stuff that we don't really want to accept. The difficulties, the difficult mental states, the horrible, shameful feelings about ourselves. That we can't cope, or we're judging it with the harsh judgments we have about ourselves. All of that. So this is this black vase, tall neck vase, is the alchemical night associated with a process called Negredo, or the darkening. So in the Negredo, it's like you don't know what's going on. Nobody around knows what's happening to you, but something is taking place, some deep process dissolving you and remaking you into something else. So it's like saying, well, we need to not worry about this. We need to not worry about things falling apart, things just appearing sort of unmanageable. So so this can be a rite of passage. So rite of passage is where something, we go through something, some ordeal, and we come out the other side, and it's been difficult, but and it's been confusing, and we've not known what's happened. But at the end of it, when we come out the end, we are a different person, and something has changed. Something has grown in a way, a bit like the plant has grown because of the manure in the soil. It doesn't just depend on the light and water, So if the dark night is indeed a rite of passage, your job is to let the transformation take place. Be sculpted, renewed, changed. You are the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Your task is to let the change happen. Do what you can to participate in and cautiously and artfully further the process. So it says, you may imagine your life as a continuous line from birth to death, and you may think of yourself as either growing or being stagnant. But another way is to see your life as a series of transformations in which you become a person with new capabilities and new talents. And each of these steps, each of these transformations has its own dark night. It has its own dark night of the soul. But this dark night of the soul is one sign that you're alive. So I did talk about a little bit earlier about Heidegger, being the philosopher Heidegger who invented existentialism, and so he sorry, I just lost my thread. Hang on. No, I lost it. Sorry. Something to say about Heidegger, but oh yeah, I did. Yeah. So Heidegger, he talks about what we kind of experience. He talks about remembering the fact that we exist. Well, not that we exist, that we have a being. So he talks about remembering being. So forget about theorizing about things. What can you say if all you can say that is you're looking out into the world from an experiential perspective? What can you say about that? Well, you can say that you appear in the world as if you're just thrown here. You can't theorize about where you came from. You're just here, experiencing things. And what the best thing to do with that is to care about your experience. And his attitude towards anxiety was really interesting, because he said that, well, okay, so you're experiencing anxiety. So anxiety isn't something to try and kind of get rid of, because that's like trying to dismiss something about your experience. What anxiety tells you is that it tells you you're alive, and it tells you that you care about what you experience, because you're anxious about your experience changing into something else, or even like disappearing altogether in death, so that's a fantastic thing to think. Oh yeah, okay, well, anxiety is a positive sense that I am alive. It's telling me I'm alive, and in a way, I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to worry about the fact that I'm being anxious and try to get rid of it. It's just telling me that it's just energy in a certain sort of way. Yeah. So it's always good to try and take some practical precepts or ideas out of talks, and so maybe today, what we could do is just try to sort of let ourselves experience, if we are experiencing fear and dread, or a bit of a dark night of the soul, just feeling confused about what's happening. We're just not used to this new situation of being on our own, or not having our normal things to stimulate us, and family around, or whatever your situation is. Friends. I've not seen my friends for a week. Well, no, actually, it's more like 2 weeks. I've not seen anybody, that I kind of have close relationships with physically for 2 weeks. So yeah, it's unfamiliar, and we don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come in the future as well. On top of that, which kind of adds to our anxiety. But I think what we can do this week is to try and have a sense, a bit more of a container, of us being, we're working within. Well, we're working with the conditions that we're in right now. So we're not working with imaginary conditions that were there before or will be there in the future, but we're just working with what's here right now, with our actual situation. So maybe sort of drawing a bit of a boundary around yourself and saying, this is my actual situation, what am I going to do with it? Can I carry on doing whatever I'm doing, when difficult feelings come up, or fear comes up? Can I stay calm? Can I carry on trying to be ethical and thinking of others, and think, well, how can I contribute in this situation towards the world? Not changing in a way what we'd normally do, not getting paralysed by thoughts of like, oh, what's going to happen, So yeah, keeping going through the fear and the dread and the difficulty and the dark night, and and we've got a week to practice this. So yeah, and maybe like write a few things down, write down some of the reflections. So I think what I want to try and do is try and start bringing in some way that we can structure ourselves, structure our days, so that we're being more conscious about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and recording it and planning it, and just making it more conscious. So so Milarepa in his cave, he'd be meditating a lot of the time, and he'd have, his day would be planned. It wouldn't be sort of just random sitting about. He'd be sort of turning his mind towards meditation, and having everything to support that. So okay, so that's cool. I've been talking a long time. So we'll do some. No, shall we do some body work? No, I think we'll just do some meditation actually. So let's do a reflection on our own experience of difficulty in our lives. So let's just taking your attention back into your life. And maybe bringing to mind a time when you were having a bit of a dark night of the soul. Just perhaps a bit of depression or grieving. And just recalling the confusion that was around at the time. You know, so we were just getting on with our lives, and then maybe something happened. So in my case, you know, I was getting on with life, and my mum rang up and said, "It's your dad. He's he's fallen over in the car park." He was pushing the car, which had broken down, and he collapsed and had a heart attack. And just remembering the confusion that was around, so, and how you responded to that. So in that situation, what I found difficult was just carrying on with as normal. So you know, after seeing my father kind of lying in a coffin, you know, me, my brother, and my mum went, and we were hungry, so we went and had some fish and chips. So, you know, I was not quite sure. I was a vegetarian then. I don't know if I had the fish, but anyway, it was just kind of really weird to be eating fish and chips, having just seen your father lying there immobile. But I suppose if I'd been the Buddha, would I have felt confused? Well, maybe not. Well, I wouldn't, because I'd need to eat. There's no confusion there about needing to eat in all situations. But yeah, what I did was I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop, not carry on through the, you know, experiencing the fear and dread. But I wanted to stop and do something different. And just so you know, when you're thinking about difficult, unfamiliar, uncomfortable situations in the past, where you really weren't sure what you were doing or what you needed to do, and maybe you felt a bit isolated and not understood. Maybe reflecting on the fact that, well, you did come through that. You know, you did deal with something. You did experience something, and you did keep going in a way, even though it was maybe stop-start. So maybe kind of touching the earth around the fact that you can cope with difficulty. You do cope with difficulty. And just having a sense of where the learning has come in your life, really. Has it come out of, when you just, everything's going well and you're just bobbling along? Or has it come out of times when you've really had to dig deep into your resources and work out what to do in that new situation? So just softening in your heart area around any pain or difficulty as you bring things to mind. And there's the phrase, it's just come to mind for me, Stouthearted. So it's like there is a way of just being kind of upright and stout-hearted in situations. And I think maybe this is a little bit like what the Buddha's referring to. So we don't need to do anything different from what we're doing when difficulty arises, when fear arises, when anxiety arises. Except maybe just have this like stout heart that just keeps moving forward. And maybe relying on our posture, our physical posture as well, to help that, so if we start leaning over, then we start to want to hold ourselves up and then give our attention to our body, and our body's not supporting us as much. But if we can just keep upright, keep stout-hearted, keep moving forward, and maybe let ourselves be transformed by the situation that we're in. Let ourselves be changed. Let ourselves grow through what's being given to us by life. Thanks everybody, see you tomorrow.